All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, this was one of those rare weekends in the Biden era where actually a lot happened. So it's difficult to sit down, focus in on one thing and what it tells us about where things are going. I default to the story I think is most important for all of your lives. That's the developments in Washington of the COVID economic stimulus talks. Much of the rest is certainly interesting, but this one literally means more or less money in your pocket, and it could tangibly affect your life in a material way. At the top, I'll lay out my general position. Biden's bill is fine. It's $1.9 trillion. But less important than the top line figure is that at this point in the game, it's just not enough to be transformative. People needed a $1,400 check many, many months ago. Today, it's a great, don't get me wrong, but it's simply a remittance for all of the suffering we've gone through and not additive. The unemployment benefits are also good, as are other provisions of the bill. But let's not kid ourselves into thinking that this bill is in any way a serious effort to rebuild America, to boost American workers in the long run, and to fulfill the vision of FDR that Biden continues to claim the mantle to. And while there's always a lot to say about how much Biden sucks, we can't also let the other guys off the hook here. Biden's bill is fine. It's pretty mediocre, actually. And yet, what is the GOP position on the bill? Yep, you guessed it. Universally opposed. It is worth sitting and actually considering how completely insane it is. The COVID relief package passed the House of Representatives without a single Republican vote. You might think this is just Washington politics as usual, but it actually shows how completely out of step the GOP is today with the general population. The latest Morning Consult polling on the Biden bill is astounding. 76% of voters support the plan, including 60% of Republicans. What? 60%? Yeah, and it gets even better. 7 in 10 independents support the bill. So we have a situation here where 60% of Republican voters support this bill, but 100% of GOP representatives voted against it. When I pose this question to my friends on the Hill, they point to something here or there that they object to as to why they can't vote for it. And okay, I guess I get that. But here's the problem. When you folks had control of the government, you didn't do anything. So if the Dems want to claim the mantle of actually helping people and then cram their stuff in there, isn't that their prerogative? Just they weren't smart enough to do the same thing on the other side. The magnitude of how far out of step the party is on this bill is an important takeaway I want you all to have. It's not just that Biden's bill is overwhelmingly popular right now. In the annals of modern history, it is one of the single most popular things in decades, literally. The latest Economist YouGov poll finds that somewhere in the range of 2/3 to 3/4 of Americans support the Biden package. That makes it the 5th most popular thing to be before Congress in the last 31 years. Let that sink in. In terms of the last 10 years, there is not a single thing that polls higher than the Biden bill in the 2010s. The only thing that comes close is an increase in the minimum wage of 2007, which was 14 years ago. Okay? So this thing isn't just popular. It's the most popular thing the U.S. government will have done in 14 years. And yet, the entire Republican Party finds itself on the other side of it, gambling that some culture war issue will vault them to success in the midterm elections and to the presidency in 2024. It's possible. I remain deeply cynical about what drives American politics today. But this polling vindicates my theory of how exactly to transcend the awfulness of our politics. Hidden in that chart I put before you is the way out. In the 2000s, the top 5 most popular things on the list of things that Congress has done are raising the minimum wage in 2007, the Biden COVID relief plan, campaign finance reform, the Dodd-Frank financial reform bill, and the 2009 stimulus bill. Are you sensing a theme here? Every single one of those is either economic relief in the middle of a crisis or a measure aimed at reforming our insanely structured economy or political financing scheme. Americans, right and left, are united in their hatred of the way our economy works and are overwhelmingly supportive of distributing resources to people who are suffering in a time of crisis. It literally goes beyond anything, and it's remarkable that the GOP finds itself completely on the other side of it. I took a lot of interest in CPAC, which was happening down in Florida this weekend. And as far as I could tell, aside from the golden statues of Trump and election fraud panels, there wasn't a single real effort to oppose this Biden plan. That is a dangerous place to be. On the policy front, you basically have everything on autopilot. The ideology has not been updated since 1985, and every GOP member is voting against the bill when all things said and done. At the same time, you're tying yourself wholesale and completely to Trump himself. Trump, once again, is the single most popular figure in the Republican Party, but he is not all that popular amongst the actual general population. Clinging to Trump and Trump alone without any of the attendant policy makes you holding the bag of around 38% of the U.S. population, who are with you, and the rest who just say, hey man, I want my checks. The gamble is that the Dems will overreach on culture, bringing independents into the camp at a critical time. And it's been a good gamble that's paid off before. But something tells me things are different today. You can only stand united in opposition to something so dramatically, overwhelmingly popular before something has got to give. And because Trump sucks all the oxygen out of the room and he doesn't prompt any new thinking, all I can say is good luck. Next time, maybe whenever you think privately about why you're losing, take a look at that chart and you'll get a pretty good idea. It's pretty amazing, isn't it, Crystal, when you actually think to sit back and say, wow, this is the single most popular thing they've done since the minimum wage increase in 2007. The most popular thing the United States government will have done in 14 years. That's insane. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, that chart was actually really interesting. I hadn't seen that before. Of course, also very appropriate that the minimum wage so overwhelmingly popular that everybody is apparently united in blocking now. Democrats and Republicans will be talking about that more in the show. But it's so fascinating that they're not even bothering to craft an argument against the stimulus deal, against the relief package. Like, they didn't even come together with their right-wing, like, windmill talking points or whatever it was going to be, which I'm kind of surprised at. I thought they'd be able to pick something out of this and really demonize it and make it a threat to America, and we can't have it, and do a million Fox News and Newsmax segments on it and have it be a rallying cry at CPAC and whatever. Instead, they're just kind of like, let's just not talk about that and move on.
But they still voted against it. That's the crazy part.
Exactly.
Every single one voted against it.
Every single one of them. And in the Trump era, Democrats went along with his relief plans and backed them because, look, I mean, those were imperfect as well, but people kind of had the sense like, okay, people are really hurting and we cannot stand in the way of additional help. So it's completely embarrassing and pathetic. And you're right. It gives the Democrats already the best midterm messaging you could possibly have. Every one of these people voted against you getting another check. Every one of them voted against you getting the child care tax credit. Every one of them voted against this thing at a critical time when you needed them. They walked in the other direction on an issue that is wildly popular. The other thing on betting on the culture war and culture war alone, the American people oftentimes punish the party that seems like it's obsessed with these sort of niche cultural issues versus the more broad-based issues that impact people's day-to-day lives. And I think a cycle where you could point to that, and Democrats have been on the wrong end of that before as well, but I think for the Republicans, if you look back at the midterms, when they lost the House and had significant losses across the country, they had tried to make it all about, remember the caravan? They tried to like fixate on the migrant caravan, and the Dems' messaging was none of it that inspirational, but it was about healthcare, and it was about the Republican stupid corporate tax giveaway. And that ended up being sufficient for them to win back majorities and make significant progress there because people felt like the Republicans are kind of out to lunch on that thing.
That's what's always so complicated.
When you go all in on culture, when you don't have anything else going for you, people feel like, what does this have to do with my day-to-day life? This is silly.
Well, that's the problem that they have, though, because guess what? Caravan and Kavanaugh worked very well in red states. It actually saved many of the people in red states. But in blue states or in purplish states, what happened? Obamacare is what killed them, and the tax cut in particular. I mean, that was what I remember. Even Martha McSally was on the record being like, look, everywhere I go, everybody talks about how I tried to repeal Obamacare. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe you deserve it. You know, I don't really feel that bad for you. And so you heard that from everybody in the swing district, everybody who lost in any of these either purplish or in blue states. Every single one of them got defeated on a more economic message. And in the red states, they were saved by the cultural message. So in the red states, it it'll work. And I keep saying that. I'm not saying that this won't work in Kansas. I'm not saying it won't work in, I don't know, not even Georgia anymore. I always just say Georgia. In Mississippi or even Missouri. I think Missouri will become redder, right? I think many of those places will become more red. But how are you going to win Arizona? How are you going to win Georgia? How are you going to win Wisconsin? These are the areas where they just don't have an answer. And being united in opposition to COVID relief, that's not going to do it for you. All right, Crystal, I'm looking forward to your radar. That's next.